Hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth and final session in our Integrity podcast series, Understanding Integrity. This series is brought to you via a partnership between the Institute of Public Administration Australia and the Australian Public Service Commission. My name is Rina Bruinsma and I'm the First Assistant Commissioner at the APSC. I begin today's podcast by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are broadcasting from, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the ongoing contribution they make to the life of our country and this region. Today's topic is getting practical. We're going to look at some of the initiatives, approaches and learnings that Commonwealth agencies have been undertaking to uphold and strengthen their integrity capability. And I'm joined today by an amazing panel. To set the scene for our listeners, I would note that each of our panellists are all experienced in implementing initiatives that are designed to strengthen integrity in their respective agencies. So our panel includes Heather Cook, the Deputy Director General of the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, Chris Birrer, General Manager for Services Australia, and Iain Scott, First Assistant Secretary at the Department of Finance. So thank you everyone for joining us today. What I thought we might begin with is if you could just give each of our listeners a brief bio or a profile of your current role. So I might start with you, Heather.
Thanks, Rina. It's great to be here. Great to be here with a terrific panel as well. As you mentioned, I'm the Deputy Director General of ASIO, and my current role has me responsible for ASIO's intelligence mission. So that's essentially our operational, investigative, and analytical work, and much of the capability that supports it as well.
Thanks, Heather. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Rina, and yeah, great to be on a panel with colleagues here today as well. And so my role in Services Australia is in the Payments and Integrity Group, and our group is really about ensuring payment accuracy, undertaking compliance activities, including investigations into suspected fraud, and also the agency's debt operations. And so it does cover a lot of those externally facing integrity issues, which also has, of course, an important internal integrity angle as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. And last but not at all least, Iain.
Thanks, Rina, and also great to be here with you and the panel members and all our listeners. So look, I head up the corporate services division in finance, and I basically run across the full gamut of corporate services from HR functions, so bringing in people and building their capability, through to our legal and assurance area. So also looking at how the department has operated, our sort of compliance functions, our audit functions, and our risk and assurance functions. So in some ways, the sort of full spectrum of integrity related services. And over the last 12 months or so, also heavily involved in the department's assurance task force, which undertook some work looking at the way the department, it's a culture of integrity and the way we embed it across the department. So that's been a high priority for finance recently.
Thanks, everyone. That's great. Throughout this podcast series, we've been highlighting the importance of integrity to the public service. And a key message that's been raised by speakers so far is that as individuals and collectively, we all play an important role in shaping the integrity of our workplace, from our actions and decisions to the systems, policies and practices of an organisation. Heather, I'll start with you. In an agency like ASIO, the integrity of every employee is paramount. Could you tell us more about the initiatives your agency uses to educate employees and to strengthen the integrity capability in your agency?
Sure, Rina, and you're absolutely right. In an organisation like ASIO, not dissimilar to other organisations, but I think there are some unique issues associated with being a security intelligence organisation that mean operating with very strong integrity measures, very strict adherence to legislation, to policies and procedures and guidelines is extremely important. Obviously, as an intelligence organisation, we are entrusted with quite extraordinary powers. We operate in secrecy. We have the ability under warrant to intrude on the privacy of Australian citizens and others. That is a huge responsibility for an organization and its workforce, and it's something we take extremely seriously, and it's something that requires us to make sure that we are embedding integrity and compliance and accountability across our workforce. For us, it starts right at recruitment and security vetting. So again, for an organization like ours, we have a workforce that is made up of individuals that have to have a top secret positive vet clearance. So that requires us to look very deeply into the background. It's really a whole of life check. It allows us to make a lot of inquiries into an individual's background, ask a lot of probing questions, and really it's a big intrusion on the individual, but it's necessary to ensure that we've got individuals with the right character and trustworthiness to be entrusted with the sorts of information and issues that we handle. So we look deeply at issues of honesty, trustworthiness, resilience, loyalty. These are all things that our vetting process allows us to inquire into of our workforce. So if you get through that rather lengthy and protracted and probing process, we have a fairly high degree of confidence in the character and trustworthiness of the staff. But it doesn't stop there. We have to make sure that we're training individuals to apply the legislation that we operate under, the policies and procedures that guide our work. We have to make sure that individuals are highly trained and capable of being able to assume responsibility for the things that we have to do as an organization. Ethics and accountability is a huge part of that training. It's a core component to our induction training. It's a core and mandatory requirement for ongoing training. Indeed, we have an ethics and accountability mandatory training e-learning module that everybody is required, all staff are required to complete on a 3-yearly basis. Governance and oversight is another big part of the puzzle. I think it sends all the important messages to staff when we are prioritizing things like compliance and integrity. Indeed, we have it as a key priority in our corporate plan, which means we're saying we are prepared to be measured on our performance of compliance. I think staff realize that is the management and leadership of the organization taking responsibility for the importance of things like compliance and integrity. Trust is also a big part of it. And I think from a very early stage, our workforce is trained to understand that in order to maintain our license to operate as a security intelligence organization, we need to maintain the trust not only of the government and the parliament, but most importantly, the public. And so that is another recurring and prominent message that we make sure our workforce understands, is that in order to maintain trust, we have to be wielding our powers and our authority responsibly and accountably. Otherwise, we lose our license to operate. So I think that is something that we really embed in our staff, like I said, from recruitment right through the regular training modules, embedded in our corporate plan and our performance agreements, and really making sure that operating accountably and with integrity is a core value, and it is indeed a core value of this organization. I think those are the things that allow you to really create the culture necessary to have high integrity and high accountability.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I think it's true that it's not a set and forget exercise, is it? It's not a tick and flick. We actually have to have it in our DNA. And what you've described is, supporting it right from the induction process all the way through the employee life cycle. So thank you. Chris, Services Australia, very public-facing agency. So you're delivering essential services every day directly to the Australian people. You manage problems which focus on assuring the integrity of these services. So can you please tell our listeners about the compliance programs that you oversee?
Yeah, thanks, Rina. And I think there's sort of two aspects to this. And one is sort of in terms of our customer-facing integrity operations, But also underpinning that is some important internal integrity activities and assurance activities that we have inside the agency as well. So in terms of our customer-facing activities, it is focused on payment accuracy, about ensuring that our customers are paid the right payments that's suitable for their circumstances, that they understand their obligations, including their reporting obligations, and follow up and help people make sure that they meet those obligations. Education of people around their obligations, particularly around their reporting, is a very important aspect of what we do, as is ensuring the confidence and the integrity of the welfare system by ensuring that people do receive the payments that they're entitled to, not more than what their entitlement is. Underpinning all of this is the integrity of our staff, and I think there's a lot of overlap here with what Heather spoke about, in the key aspect of Services Australia is that we need to be able to maintain the confidence of both government and the Australian people in the integrity of the programs that we deliver, and the integrity of our staff and the agency to deliver those programs. And that confidence of the Australian people and government is critical to us achieving the ambitions that we set out for ourselves in the agency's master plan, particularly around delivering services that are simple, helpful, respectful and transparent. And very much mindful of the fact that we are responsible for administering very large public payments, payments of public monies over $200 billion per year, but also very importantly, the agency's role in being responsible stewards of the private information of almost every Australian, including private and personal information which underpins people's identities. And so that's a very large responsibility that we take very seriously. And so that staff integrity is an important component and enabler of how we can also achieve the integrity in terms of our customers, and particularly around payment accuracy. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I guess the public will judge us based on the services that we deliver, and they rightly expect a very high standard from us. Iain, I'm keen to hear about what sort of approaches finance undertakes to enhance integrity.
Thanks, Rina. Look, I flagged in the sort of bio and introduction that that finance has spent a bit of time over the last 12, 18 months looking at this very issue, and it comes off the back of quite a public issue that we identified some time ago with some of our staff, and so I got to. Coming off the back of that experience, we set up our assurance task force to have a look at what can we learn from those events. And I got to say, reflecting back on it, I think actually opening up and acknowledging that there were potential issues there, and rather than shying away from it, looking at, okay, well, what can we learn from these experiences? And that all by itself, I think, has been a very positive message to staff about how much we value integrity in our culture. And to reinforce that, there was some very positive messaging about the staff who had the courage to come forward when these issues arose. And I think that's also sort of quite powerful. So as we've gone through through our assurance task force process, there's been a whole range of things that we've put in place, and some of this actually I think comes back to the sort of things that Heather was talking about with ASIO. I think we've become much more deliberate in finance about integrity, about talking about it, and about sort of being much clearer about it. So some important things that we've done there, we've actually spent time talking about integrity, what it means, how can we sort of further and strengthen and embed it in the department. We've established an integrity framework, which gives us an overarching sort of framework that brings together all those various elements that that agencies will have in place, but brings it together much more coherently and explains to staff how these things sort of fit together and why they're important. We also added in an additional leadership expectation to the department's leadership expectations, and that was act with integrity. So very much upfront, demonstrate to our staff, well, what is it that we're here for, and what is it that we value, and through those, that has given much greater sort of visibility and promoted more discussion. Then we've gone into the sort of capability space. So we've strengthened some of that upfront induction training for our staff coming in to make sure that integrity and ethics are at the forefront of some of that training, and we've made sure, in particular, that contractors also go through that sort of training as well, to make sure that we're all working from a common understanding of what we're talking about and what we're here for. We've also implemented integrity advisors, and that's a group of specifically trained, more senior staff who are available to staff to be able to go and talk about integrity matters, raise issues, seek guidance on how to be able to take issues forward. And then we've been much clearer in our reporting and our transparency with staff about integrity matters. So, for example, our board now regularly reviews an integrity dashboard that's got a range of HR and compliance stats in it that is intended to bring together a more complete picture of how the department is travelling, as a way of trying to identify emerging issues. And we now also publish quarterly a snapshot for all staff, so they can see how the department is travelling against its compliance indicators. So collectively, we've really sort of looked to up the level of visibility and deliberateness of integrity through the sort of the beginning with staff about their understanding and expectations, all the way through to transparency about, okay, well, how is the agency actually travelling and delivering against its aspirations and expectations?
Thanks, Iain. That's really interesting that so much has come about because you've actually detected and responded, I guess, to a breach. And if I could continue on with that discussion, if you're able to describe, what were the key learnings for the Department of Finance as a whole?
So look, there's a couple of levels to it, Rina. So having gone through the review process, what came out was the department overall was travelling pretty well against what it was setting out to achieve. We didn't identify any sort of specific shortcomings, but a range of opportunities to strengthen. And off the back of that was then how we arrived at some of the changes we've made. Like I said, my strong belief, having come through this, is it's, and I think this sort of harkens back to the things that Commissioner and Andrew Colvin were talking in one of the earlier sort of podcasts. It's really about the how you do things. And it is really about sort of the leadership and culture of an organisation. And I think what this demonstrated to us was culture is absolutely king. The other things we've put in place, the reporting, the improved capability and what have you, they are all ways of tools to help deliver. But ultimately, what really counts at the end of the day is the strength of your organisational culture.
Absolutely.
And I think coming out of our learnings was that the importance of senior leadership, the importance of the role we all play in our sort of day-to-day decision makings and the way we act. And then these sort of tools around sort of transparency and reporting just help you sort of confirm and identify how you are travelling.
Thanks, Iain. Chris and Heather, grateful if you could also outline some scenarios and what practical steps you might have taken to address issues either recently or in the past. I might start with you, Heather.
Yeah, it's I think it's as Iain identified. We haven't identified any systemic issues relating to integrity and compliance, but there's always room to improve and room to make sure that that we are really scrutinizing, not just doing the thing right, but doing the right thing. And I think that is something that's always worth scrutinizing. And there are ways to be more visible and more deliberate about that. And I guess the example that I would use is that, over time in ASIO, we've made compliance sort of everybody's responsibility. So I said we've taken more of a diffused and decentralized way of managing it, with everybody assuming individual accountabilities. And while that can be effective, I think what we found is that compliance was everybody's responsibility, but in some ways it was nobody's responsibility. So one of the things we've done in the last actually in the last couple of years, is create a dedicated directorate. So a place within the structure with a home whose responsibility is a compliance. And that's not in terms of being responsible for compliance across the organization, but rather compliance policies, procedures, education, really creating a home where we sort of hone our expertise, where we identify best practice and ways of doing things better, and really provides a place where we are consolidating our understanding of indeed how compliant are we as an organization, how compliant are we with our legislation, with our ministerial guidelines and regulations, and with our own internal policies and procedures. And what that has done is really created a central focus for us on shining a light on how we are performing against those compliance obligations. And I think one of the pleasing things that has come out of it is really revealed that we are very good at self-reporting and identifying areas where we've had an error or compliance breach. And I think really creating a culture where self-reporting is not a punitive. You don't expect a punishment associated with that, but rather it's a behavior that's rewarded. That we don't hide a mistake, we actually confront it, report it, deal with it, and learn from it. And I think pleasingly, what we've seen and been able to track across the organization, by virtue of having this centralized directorate responsible for compliance, is actually being able to tangibly measure our compliance culture in some ways, whether that is through self-reporting, whether that is through trends in reductions in compliance issues. And I think that's really allowed us to demonstrate, be transparent about it across the organization, and really vector in on that and pay attention to those very important issues. Another thing that we've done under our corporate structure, again, with having compliance as a key priority for the organization under our corporate plan, it puts it on the same footing as our counterterrorism work and our counter-espionage and foreign interference. So it's put a compliance and operating with integrity on par with our main intelligence core business. But that has resulted in cascading attention to compliance and integrity in the business plans at the division level and at the branch level, and it's cascaded into performance agreements as well, where holding ourselves to account at that division, branch, and individual level is now a feature of our sort of corporate governance and accountabilities. And I think that really sends the message to an organization that compliance and operating with integrity is as high a priority as the core business that we conduct.
Thanks, Heather. And I think, going back to what Iain said, where culture is key, all of those things that you're doing is actually embedding integrity into the culture of the organisation. Chris, so scenarios and practical steps.
Yeah, thanks, Rina. And I think the events of sort of the last year and a half and the role that the agency has played in supporting the government's response to COVID-19 and providing the services that Australians have been relied on during that period has been quite a calling cry for us, and in terms of sort of really drawing out the importance of having public confidence in the agency and the link that has to internal integrity. And so as part of that, the agency has been sort of working on our strengthening our framework. We do have in place an integrity framework, which helps to provide a central hub and sort of central structure to how we look at integrity and go about it. Increasing our communications and our education with staff, including senior leadership communications, has been an important part of that. And also leveraging off opportunities like the upcoming International Fraud Awareness Week in November, where we can really sort of highlight some of the integrity issues and challenges and really help to get those messages out. It complements sort of the ongoing mandatory training that we have in place, which helps to provide that common baseline of knowledge across the agency, and especially around identifying the different aspects of areas where integrity issues can arise, be they in relation to sort of to payments, to the incorrect and unauthorized access of information, to protection of customers' identity and key information, and also sort of the risks from preferential servicing or outright sort of inappropriate accessing to payments by staff. That's all underpinned by some strong communications about the role of leadership and the importance of leaders being seen to take integrity as something that's important, speaking about it, and also demonstrating behaviours, and really driving at all levels of leadership the importance of people acting when they sit at the early signs of any sort of behavioural or change of circumstance issues that arise, because we do know that sort of integrity issues often arise from sort of small changes in circumstances or behaviour, which then grow over time. And so being aware of that, and also through that highlighting that integrity is indeed the responsibility of everyone, and that everyone in the agency does have a privileged role to play in terms of being able to provide trusted services to the Australian people. In terms of the external and customer facing integrity measures, we've really worked to apply the key principles of the master plan around simple, helpful, respectful and transparent services. That's underpinned work that we've done in terms of improving our transparency and education of customers, including giving people greater access to information and also options through such as the Money You Owe function within the Centrelink online app, to be able to view information about debts, about what repayments they have, and to be able to make adjustments themselves. More micro-servicing within the interactive voice recognition systems for those customers who do call, and also improving our communications with customers to make them more respectful, more helpful to people, but also to provide more educative information through updating our correspondence that we deliver to customers, the tone of it, the messages we send, and also using more contemporary means of communicating with people, such as SMS messaging and that sort of messaging that in essence sort of helps to sort of nudge people and remind people of their reporting obligations. And so we've done quite a lot in terms of continuing to modernise how it is that we engage with customers on their own integrity issues. We look to do that in a data-driven way, in a way that's respectful and transparent to customers, and which leverages off the new technologies that we are bringing online through the transformation projects within the agency. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Something that you've all touched on, I suppose, is the importance of leadership. So building on our discussions today, including that concept of leadership, I'm interested in practical initiatives that you think can be implemented to strengthen integrity that have broad application across the APS. So, I'd invite you to talk about an initiative in your agency or some aspect of leadership that you could see being helpful across the whole of the APS. Iain.
Look, I think there the sort of the really important sort of elements is around the communication and the partnership in terms of being able to work with other agencies about the intent of what's being achieved and what's practical. Certainly within the department, as I sort of said before, a lot of it around just talking about integrity, talking about what it means, and the practical outworkings of that as we do our sort of day-to-day business I think is really important. And it's some of the little things. It's the way in which we react when problems arise or when issues are brought to us. It's as senior leaders, we're very much sort of setting the tone for how other staff will look at us and approach where these sorts of issues arise. And likewise, when we're working with our sort of partner agencies, the ability to be able to have those sort of mature, frank sort of discussions about issues, sort of really, really important. And I don't think we can actually, as senior leaders, underestimate the importance of the way our staff are watching us and learning from what it is that we do. Even those little sort of small things can be far more powerful than we realise.
Chris, noting the close relationship that Services Australia has with the Australian community, what are the sort of activities that you've undertaken to maintain public trust? Things that other agencies might learn from.
Well, I think one of the issues or a good example of what we've been doing is in the space of integrity and of working with our customers on that, and that's been about looking at what we do across all of the agency and all in the engagements that we have with customers around preventing inadvertent non-compliance and also what we term sort of preventable debt. Now, we know that the vast majority of Australian citizens who are our customers do want to do the right thing, and at times sort of understanding obligations and understanding the links between updates of circumstances and adjustments to payments can be sort of tricky to understand. And so we want to help people to sort of improve their understanding of that link and of their obligations of working with customers, and so promoting that within our own staff about how best they can achieve better outcomes for customers themselves in helping people to avoid inadvertent non-compliance and preventable debt, better outcomes for the agency in terms of delivering better customer outcomes which are consistent with the legislation that we operate within and with the policy parameters of the payments that we administer. And also better outcomes for them because they can see the results in terms of delivering customer outcomes and good outcomes for the Australian people, whether both from the perspective of being taxpayers and so showing sound stewardship of public outlays, as well as delivering good customer outcomes for those people we engage directly with. So that includes sort of building upon our awareness of the risk indicators where people are at risk of inadvertent non-compliance and preventable debt, changes in circumstances, not reporting income correctly and the like, helping customers in terms of educating them about what their obligations are in those regards, and helping people to update their information and circumstances so that their payment is accurate for the circumstances that they're in terms of their eligibility. And so we're doing a lot of work around that, around promoting that from not just a systems and business process perspective, but also a cultural perspective. And that's got a strong sort of cultural element about our staff sort of taking responsibility for achieving the outcomes that are the appropriate outcomes, both in terms of our stewardship of the public outlays, as well as delivering good customer outcomes and the best customer experience in the circumstances.
Thanks, Chris. Heather, I'll now turn to you. Returning to the concept of leadership, what steps can leaders take to bring all of this to life for their employees?
Well, I think there's no doubt that a workforce takes its cues from the top. And it's been said a number of times already, but, leaders set the vision, leaders articulate the priorities, they demonstrate accountability, and they create the atmosphere for the organization. We all know leadership is core to and leadership behaviors to a culture of an organization. I think it sounds cliche, but it's not just about talking the talk, it's about walking the walk. That role modeling of desired behaviors is critically important. If integrity and compliance is a key priority, if doing the right thing is important to an organization, then it should be clearly articulated in its corporate documentation and reflected in its governance arrangements. It should absolutely be reflected in its values and charter of behaviors. Values is the anchor, to culture in any organization. I think making sure that it is prioritized in corporate documentation and that we are holding ourselves to account and prepared to be measured. I think those things send all the right message, and that comes from the top as well. I think it has to be backed up with clear expectations and accountabilities for senior leaders and then cascading down into staff. And I think it's important to reflect the desired and expected behaviors and measure those in our performance agreements, and calling out issues of integrity and compliance as core performance indicators for everybody. But that tone needs to be set from the top. I know that Director General Mike Burgess has clearly prioritized this for the organization, and I've watched how setting those visible evidence and those visible structures of compliance and integrity across the corporate structures and governance structures of the organization. I've really seen how that has then filtered down to the next layer of management and down through the organization. But there's no doubt it starts at the top, and I think that's the commitment that organizations need to be to build that strong culture of integrity.
Thanks, Heather. Look, thank you all for your time today. What a great way to end our series, and that's with making it practical, making it real. Some of the things that I've heard is that it requires a whole of agency approach, all the way from the top through to the employees, but each of us have a role to play. We're all responsible for integrity, where it's underpinned by policies and practices, but in actual fact, it's up to the human beings that are working in the APS to make sure that it is something that we do every single day. Agencies have a responsibility to develop the integrity capability of their staff, and that includes their leaders. You can't automatically get the DNA of an agency overnight. It's something that we have to work on. And as I said before, it's not a set and forget. We have to work hard at it and keep up that reputation that we've built. Look, thank you all. That concludes our Understanding Integrity podcast series. And I would like to thank all of the panelists, Chris, Heather and Iain, who've joined us today, and the other panelists that have joined us throughout the series. So through these podcasts, we've had the opportunity to discuss why integrity is so fundamental to the work of the APS, the integrity system, how we can work with stakeholders across and outside of the APS, and what approaches we can undertake to strengthen integrity culture. To our listeners, thank you very much for joining us on this journey. If you'd like more information and resources on integrity, have a look at the Australian Public Service Commission website and also the APS Academy website. So the Academy offers a range of resources, courses and other learning offerings on the APS craft of integrity if you're interested in exploring this topic further. Thank you all for today and goodbye.
Integrity series is brought to you by the Institute of Public Administration Australia and the Australian Public Service Commission.